it's very rare that we get to see it be different.
Yeah.
And when it is different, it tends to be very, very noticeable and borderline catastrophic.
Rise.
Like characters, well, Rise, but like we also have, characters like Annie.
Yeah.
Because again, like it may be cool to the touch, but you mix magic and pregnancies, things go weird.
As we've said, at some point we need to write like a 10 commandments.
Don't touch the living weapon. Don't get pregnant with magic.
Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra, episode 159. I'm your host, Ryan. Here, the other host, Hetch. I didn't even let him get set up on his end. I'll let him do that.
No, this is just a candid record now. There's nothing to set up, all right? Like, this is reality television. I'm about to storm out. You're going to have to put a bunch of bleeps in here. Right?
I'll set the stage as you get your notes and stuff ready.
And then I'll sit down in front of a camera and just be like, I can't, like, who does Ryan think he is?
So, housekeeping up top. You can find us everywhere. Listen to us everywhere. Visit us at podcastcore.com for all of our info. Remember, that's podcastcor.com for all of our info. Email us at podcastcore@gmail.com. Same spelling. Follow us on all the platforms because that helps us with discoverability. We're grassroots here. We're knocking doors. Telling people on our podcast. Help us out. Leave a like and comment wherever you're listening. But word of mouth has gotten us this far. So tell a friend to learn to win the battle within by listening to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast. And today we're talking about Karma's lore. Yet another character, if you're coming from our last episode, another character we talked about a long time ago that we're happy to revisit. Go listen to episode 17 if you want more information to help you here, because we're not going to dig too much into Karma's origins, because the story doesn't do that too much. This is more of a present, in-the-moment story. And the story is Remember Me, written by, if pardon the pronunciation, Dana Leury Shaw. Or Leury Shaw.
We know we butchered it, and we are so sorry, Mr., Mrs., themses Shaw.
Yeah.
We're very sorry.
But yeah, we're talking about who essentially is, we'll give you the gist because we don't want to spoil too much, is Karma is the avatar. Her real name is Dara, but she's the embodiment of many generations of spiritual entities that pass knowledge down through the ages. Not like celestials. We know there's so many different metaphysical.
Like if you don't want the fantasy look at it, like Karma is the Dalai Lama.
Exactly.
If you want the fantasy look at it, it's Avatar: The Last Airbender, not the blue people.
Oh yeah, I should have clarified.
Yeah, I got you, dog. But and I definitely encourage you, like, not only to go listen to like the Karma episode, but also the Irelia episode.
Yes.
Because both the biographies for Irelia and Karma really deal with the beginning of Ionia going to war with Noxus.
Yes.
All right. Like they are the two kind of like faces of the war against Noxus, whereas Karma is the spiritual faces of the warrior face. All right. And that's as much of like the bios as we're going to cover. All right. So for today's story, we start off with an older woman named Watai.
Mm-hmm.
And Watai is essentially climbing up a mountain to a monastery that is carved in the mountainside that is the Lasting Altar. The Lasting Altar being the official home of the Karma.
Yeah.
All right. Because again, like, it is one human body embodying a lot of different past lives. All right. And Watai is going up there and is just kind of saying to herself, "This damned place," and mentioning that to herself how difficult this journey's been, not only because of her failing body, mentioning her knees, but like it's also been spiritually a very draining journey for her. And she mentions that she had visited with Jagkree. um I know I butchered that one as well, so
Yeah, the names are
this is
tough.
the episode for it. But again, we said it before, once we say it, it's canon. All right, so she visited with Jackery 60 years ago after the monks had summoned him. And that is the only things that we know about Watai at this point. And when Watai is able to make it to the lasting altar, her knee gives out, buckles, and she hears a voice over her shoulder asking, "Are you all right?" And she looks up to see the new face of Karma.
Yeah. So the thing that stands out here is that Karma's tall.
Hell yeah.
which, which doesn't really come across in game. But Watai points that out as this tall woman, goddess like standing over her, asking her if she's okay. And that was the first thing I was like, oh, okay, that's a cool little tidbit to make it stand out. But once again, where this story goes, it's kind of I would say it's bittersweet. It's a bittersweet story, right?
Yeah.
Because with Carmen, we'll find out what ties tied to this place is, because all we know is she's visited with her husband in the past, and he's no longer obviously in the picture for some reason. What is that reason?
Right. And as we just stated before even recording the episode, there's a lot that's happened in Ionia. So it could be a lot of reasons. Who knows? So
he's in the spirit realm with Jen, just hanging out. He left his wife and a deadbeat husband.
Yeah,
just hang out in the spirit realm.
No, he's drinking buddies with Ivan. Oh goodness. Yeah, so we have Karma offering a hand to help Watai up. Watai is like, "Nah, I'm good," and ignores Karma's help. And Karma kind of just, switches over into stoic, avatar behavior. And it's like, oh, okay, this is a business transaction. All right. And Watai even mentions that it was like, oh, like once she recognizes that this is Karma, it's like, I have an appointment to see you.
Mm-hmm.
And it is at this point where Karma is like, okay, well, I'm going to switch over to business, but I'm still gonna help you because that's who I am. And we get like a description of what her healing magic looks like. And as far as like with the color scheme and everything, it's written kind of more like her spells in game, which is nice. I like getting like that not only the consistency but a bit of a different look at it, right? Because instead of it being like this beam or just a shield being put on, we get a look of just like glowing green, which is nice.
There's also this the sense mentioned of a cool touch to the skin, which to me immediately triggered some thoughts about how Freljordian Iceborne magic works. And that seems to be a through line with a lot of magic in Runeterra being cold to the touch. For our Runation book listeners, if you know how Rise's power system works, and even when you look at how the mist works and everything, the cooling touch of magic seems to be a consistent thing.
Yeah, and it's very rare that we get to see it be different.
Yeah.
And when it is different, it tends to be very, very noticeable and borderline catastrophic.
Rise.
Like characters Rise, but like we also have characters like Annie. Because again, like it may be cool to the touch, but you mix magic and pregnancies, things go weird.
As we've said, at some point we need to write like a 10 commandments.
Don't touch the living weapon. Don't get pregnant with magic. But it is at this point in going back to the story, it's at this point where Karma notices that Watai is still kind of like being standoffish. And Watai is like, my leg is fine, Enlightened One, but your magic can't heal every pain. And Karma is like, okay, bet I gotta be Karma. I have to start playing my role here.
Yeah.
And she apologizes as like, if this is a sense of grief in my place in the war, then I am sorry. I've spent much of my time apologizing to many, but I don't regret what I've done, and I don't regret standing as the face of Ionia against Noxus. I don't
Yeah.
regret it. And Watai mentions that it's like, hey, no, like my loss is before the war. And throughout all of this, Watai is kind of nervously playing with the jade ring on her finger.
Mhm.
And she removes this jade ring and hands it to Karma and asks, do you recognize this? And this is where we get to essentially have Karma go into the Avatar state from Avatar Last Airbender, because she grabs the ring and it's like, I do recognize it. I gave it to, no, he gave it to you. And we actually get like a description of what it looks like for Karma to interact with their past lives at this point. I'm not going to read it outright because it actually is like a whole paragraph, but it is a nice thing if you want to go read this story, which we always encourage you to go read the
Yes.
stories
Yes.
because these authors do wonderful jobs. And Dana or Donna is no exception. And so like, go read it to like see what this looks like. And this is where we get to learn who Jagkree is. Like, so the life that she's going back to is Jackree's life. And so it turns out that Jagkree wasn't only Watai's husband, but Jagkree was one of the previous karmas. And
Yeah, and to the point where we're gonna learn his experience becoming the Avatar or becoming Karma was so much different from Dara experience when she was younger. Because if you've listened to the episode, like we asked, one note from that is she had a very tortured childhood, as there was a gap in between trying to find the next avatar. So she was being inflicted as if she was sick, magically sick, with no one in her small village to be able to diagnose what was going on. So she had to kind of suffer through it as a child until she was found by monks. Whereas Jackery knew he got the position and was getting his stuff packed together, getting ready to move to a new state, right?
yeah,
Like he didn't go through the same experience. So this also will play into their avatar relationship in a bit as well,
yeah,
with that difference in background.
and we play a lot on Avatar, but we play a lot on it because it is also a a Western fantasy story.
Yeah.
So like most people are going to recognize that stuff, but it's very fitting for Karma's story because if you remember from Avatar Last Airbender, like the Avatar before Aang was Avatar Roku.
Mhm.
And whenever Avatar Aang was like, kind of conversing with Roku, Roku was a grown man when he was still finishing his Avatar training,
Yep.
right? And this is more like what Jagkree was, because it's
Great example.
like when Jagkree ends up like kind of tapping into Karma and speaking to Karma, or well, speaking to Dara, right now, it's like, hey, like 60 years ago, me and my wife are coming to the lasting altar. We're going to build a new home and a life for each other here. And it is at this point that it's like, I'm ready to be Karma, but Watai was not ready to leave home.
Yeah.
And so we now know what happened as far as their relationship is that they both had, their life took them in different directions, which is one of the reasons this story is bittersweet, because that's real. All right. Like I'm willing to bet that the 9 out of 10 listeners to this have experienced a relationship like that, whether it be a romantic one or just, a platonic one with a dear friend,
Yep.
where life took you into different directions and you had to part ways. Like this is just a real story, right? And once, Jackery like is finished explaining this to Dara, we kind of flash back to the present, and Karma looks down and asks, "Are you Watai?" And it's even mentioned that she's asking kind of doubtfully,
Yeah.
like she's not 100% sure if like what she's saying is true. And the like that is where Watai is like, oh, and I'll just read this directly. Oh, bless the spirits. I wasn't sure if Jackery was himself in you.
Mhm.
And and this goes as far as like the kind of more of a give and take of where, now Karma is, talking with Watai, and like, they're actually catching up. It's Jackery catching up with Watai, through the mouth of Karma, and mentioning that it's like, hey, no, like I always loved you. And Watai is, apologizing for not being able to stay. And Jackery is like, no, I never forgot you. And that takes us to the point where then it finally switches back to Watai talking to Dara, or the current Karma, and offering Dara, like, hey, take this ring, because I want Jackery to like hold on to it so that he doesn't forget me. And Karma is like, no, you keep it because he wanted you to have it. He never stopped loving you, but also because he hasn't spoken to me since I started the war. Because again, this is the Karma is the spiritual face of Ionia. You can't be very spiritual and also fight a war. Like
Yeah.
they don't go hand in hand. Star Wars has a whole thing about how the Jedi aren't supposed to be peacekeepers. All right, like this, they don't go hand in hand. So like as a token of good faith to Watai, Karma is like, no, you hang on to the ring as a thank you because this is I I haven't been able to speak with the most recent Karma,
Yeah.
which if you again going back to Avatar, that's one of the biggest problems that Avatar Korra has, is that she has no spiritual connection to the other avatars. It's like, who the hell's going to guide me?
Yeah.
And so this is a good moment of healing for both characters here.
Yeah, I mean, 4 years later, you now understand why we named our Karma episode "The Legend of Karma." We did it. And listen, long-running jokes, baby.
You know what makes it funny? Repetition.
Repetition. Yeah, that's a great thing because you have this interesting dynamic with when you understand Karma's lore and how big of an impact her choice to start or to participate in the war to protect Ionia from Noxus and what that has done to her followers. Because we're so used to having deity figures that aren't reachable by normal means, right? You don't get to go to a stone-faced uh, carved sanctuary and just speak to them, right? Usually you have to commune with them in some way and then interpret some message of the wind blowing. There's none of that. She's right there, right? And she's also justifying her decisions, a decision that not only in the physical realm has divided her followers, but it also in her own person has divided her council. So that creates a situation that the average person can't really connect with, right? Like that's very difficult to have to be able to be the link between two worlds, but have both sides of those worlds have divisions within them. That's a great setup, right?
Uh,
For a method of storytelling.
Yeah, it's an incredible setup, absolutely incredible setup, and executed very well. But that does take us to the final part that we have here, which is kind of fast forwarding a few hours, going later into the evening, and it is at this point where now Karma is able to just speak to Watai as Darha. Like it is like I don't have to be playing my role here, and like they are able to start building a better relationship themselves. And Dara asks Watai to stay at the lasting altar at least for a few more days. Not only for for Watai to have a chance to rest physically, because I mean she's not a spring chicken, all right?
Yeah.
Like this is an older woman. So it's like not only for you to rest, but I like karma is like I think that you have the like you can be a conduit that I can use to heal within myself to like start bridging the division that I've created with my decisions. Um, and and so our chapter ends with Watai, kind of retiring to her own room at the lasting altar, looking out at the moon and looking at the moonlight, reflecting on the jade ring that was given to her by Jackree, and appreciating not only the healing that she was able to do like through karma as well as being able to assist karma, but appreciating that just like the love that the ring represents, uh, and uh, and just like how she feels looking at the moonlight reflecting off of it, those feelings are going to last forever because of karma, the being that is karma, and that love is going to transcend throughout, like past her mortal life and throughout mortal time itself. And that's where our story leaves off. And which again, kind of hammering home the bittersweet side of it, right? Like it is because I mean, people grieve in different ways, and it is a beautiful way as far as being able for Watai to remember a loved one. But at the end of the day, it's like still coming to terms with having to walk away from that relationship and the fact that they both still had mutual feelings for each other when they walked away that they never let go of, and that's hard.
Yeah, now we're in the discussion portion. You have all the information. If you want to leave, I would suggest hanging around because these are usually the fun times. But this brings up a unique situation that eh, people personally, we talked about how hard it is to connect as a person with somebody in karma's situation, right? Or current karma situation. And one thing situation that's very rare is when you have to apologize for something because you want to maintain a relationship, but you're not particularly sorry for what you're apologizing for. And that thing doesn't really have, like, it's not like you hurt someone. It's just that a difference in opinion on something that may not be impactful, but you want to maintain a certain relationship, but also reinforce that, no, this is what I believe, this is what I stand for. And I think what I did was right. And that alongside a concept Hetch and I have brought up among our Ionian episodes and some Noxus episodes is the effects post-war in a formerly peaceful nation. And it's something we constantly kind of think about is we know Irelia's situation and where she was when the war started, making the decision to participate made sense.
Yeah.
Dragging karma into it because of the escalation of events, because of Noxus escalating things, because you're familiar with like our Riven episode, Noxus had a couple chances to say, actually, let's not do this, right?
Yeah.
But they kept pushing the envelope, which meant it forced Ionia to keep pushing the envelope and involving more and more sex, quote unquote, of the nation until they had to establish what would be a nation army, which they didn't want, right? All this stuff plays into karma because of her specific avatar situation. And that's created a story element that I like to keep coming back to. And we're happy we got to talk about karma again. Because when Hetch talked about what Ty first getting there and kind of that initial bumping of heads, essentially, which karma was expecting because she's been bumping heads with followers that have been coming up there.
Mm.
She's like, oh, here we go again. I want to speak to the manager, quote unquote, right? And slowly getting to the point where karma's like, oh shit, I want to keep talking to this woman because she's helping me help myself with my situation. That's cool. This is a very complex it's a very complex pocket to put a story like this into, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is a very complex thing, and one of the things that I think is like so cool about how it's written is that despite how complex it is, it's easy to follow.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that karma has been butting heads with followers all over the place. So then like it's like we got the, complex relationships for dummies at the start.
Yeah.
Where it was like, look, yeah, I am sorry for how this war has affected you. I am sorry for how the war has affected all of my followers that I've spoken to. I don't regret what I did.
Yeah.
And Like that was the opening, right? And like we don't want to dive into it on this episode,
No,
right? Like that's episode 17 is where we dove into it. Go listen to that if you want to. But
and we'll be
you know,
back.
the very, very short cliff notes of it is that the big crescendo for the conflict of Ionia and Noxus involves karma.
Yeah.
And it involves karma doing a lot of destruction. Okay. Like
Yeah.
that's basically like the what she is talking about here, right? And not that's not the only thing, but that's going to be the picture that's next to all the things,
Yeah.
right? And so that is what we have, and that is like what is guiding us through the nuances of, oh wait, no, you were involved with one of my past lives. I haven't heard from that past life since the war, but now they're talking again. Oh, like we need to talk about this because now not only am I not sorry for what I've done to protect Ionia from Noxus, I'm not sorry for choosing my role as Karma, but it's not me saying that, it's the past life saying that. And so like it despite how nuanced it is, it's like we're given the roadmap before, and it like so hats off to Dana or Donna, like hats off to you. Like this, I love how this is presented because something that could be very complicated to follow was very easy to follow, and but while also hanging on to all those nuances, and like if you can't appreciate something like that, you're not going to appreciate a lot of like really good you're not going to appreciate a lot of stories that build character and
Yeah.
personality. And that's what this does. And it does it in a great and healthy way. While also just being a great story that you could use to be like, hey, therapy's okay for people. All right. Like
Yeah.
if you've got some stuff that you're really struggling with, talk to somebody about it.
Yeah.
Because I at no point was it said that Watai is a licensed therapist, but being able to like have this conversation with Watai is helping Dara heal these wounds that she's created within her own spirit. So it's like, it is healthy to talk about it. Like, so like this is a good poster child for like talk about your feelings.
Yeah, you just opened another realm of discussion, which is something that was displayed well in Avatar: The Last Airbender, where the isolation an Avatar can go through, and even though the Avatar comes from a human vessel, that humanity can be lost, and you lose that sense of connection and socializing among others, and that's something that Karma, well, specifically Dara in this situation. I know we keep doing this, but it comes with it's the nature.
It comes with the territory.
So Dara is starting to see her humanity because at the beginning of the story, like Hetch mentioned, she's very stoic. I'm at work. I'm doing my job, and slowly begins to melt back into the person and connecting with Watai on a personal level, which is something she doesn't get to do with her followers because they're coming to her as a spiritual vessel. So yeah, like Hetch mentioned, that's actually something I didn't really think about. But I do want to piggyback on what he said is if you've been listening to us for any length of time, we talk about how much we love the paint here. When we say League of Legends has good paint, these are the stories, these are the levels that we're talking about. We're talking about the going into the depth here, the effort that's put into the story from these authors, and you as the reader committing to going deep with them is what gives it value. If you always consume these at a surface level and just like, oh, I just want to know where she's from and blah blah, okay, I'm moving on, you're not going to understand why it's so good because there's so much fantasy out there and so much media that tries to do this and fails at it
Yes.
consistently. So when you
Yeah.
have a property that does it well, and also, we love to show respect to the authors and not just riot the people working there because, authors come and go and we want to make sure they get their flowers as well because this isn't easy. Not everyone can write this type of stuff, on a contract and then bounce, right?
Yeah, and forget about like not like the difficulty of it because it definitely is not easy, but the absolute scale that it's being
Yes.
done on because this world is massive. Like
Yeah.
we've talked about,
League's been out
like
for over
we're
10
talking about
over a
like
decade.
Shurima. Yeah, Shurima, Ionia, Bilgewater, Demacia, Noxus, Freljord, Bandle City, the Spirit Realm, like the
Ishtal, yeah.
Celestials, Ishtal, like this list goes on, and it's the stories like this that make us appreciate it because it's not it's there are so many different fantasy worlds out there, and the things that set apart the ones that are like that I enjoy uh that I enjoy more than the other ones, the things that set it apart are the ones that can breathe life into the
Yeah.
characters. And this is like this story, one of our more recent ones, our Janna
Mhm.
episode, like those are the ones that, like, it's breathing life into the stories because you can, yeah, like, oh, like here's a bunch of ghosts that are coming out of this, dead island that are trying to kill everybody. It's like, yeah, that's great fantasy and everything, but what makes it really cool is how it's affecting all of these other characters and the way that it's being portrayed to us that helps kind of put you into their shoes. And that's why it's good paint. It's not just red. Like, there's a whole different myriad, there's a spectrum going on here, and like there's going to be something for everyone to be able to relate to somewhere within all this, which is why we love talking about the paint.
Yeah. Hetch always finishes off these episodes so well. So with that, as always, thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with the next episode.
You're gonna make me blush. All right. Hey, take care, everybody.